in.
And you will start, Ram?
Yes, yes. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this session, interesting session. We will try to give a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes for all the participants to join, to make sure that we have the largest number of participants available. And then we will begin introducing our guest speaker, and then we will begin in the content. You can ask any questions that might pop up during the session. Feel free to ask, and if there's anything that you need to ask, even in Arabic, I can try to translate it to Hans during the session. Okay. Hope you can. Thank you for all for joining the session, and we have Mr. Hans Heinrich Groth from CrossWorkers, which is a Danish company, one of the biggest companies that is available. I'm sure he will talk about the company more during the session. The aim of the session is to give you an overview of how to work with European countries and how to work with European clients. We will try to give you a room in the middle, after the session as well, to ask any questions that you might have. So I won't take any more of the time. Hans, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Hans Heinrich. Normally, I go by the name Hans, and some even add a Mr. to the Hans, which is fine. I'm a little bit down to earth, so I don't need any doctor or anything like that. My name's Hans. I'm the CEO of CrossWorkers, and the purpose is basically to give you a few insights into some of the cultural aspects of working with especially Europe. But of course, some of it can also be related to working with the US, working with the Gulf, and so forth. But this is specifically on the European angle, so to say. So let's kick off. As we said in the beginning, I would actually really prefer to do this, let's say, in the international way, which means that you ask questions as we go along instead of asking in the end. One way of doing this is just me kind of reading up from a PowerPoint. That's really, really boring. So I would much rather have questions, relate to those questions, and talk with you about those questions, because it creates a different dynamic. So I will really encourage everybody to ask questions as we go along. Just interrupt, and we'll control that through the chat or whatever. But it gives a whole different kind of output. So you already have my name. I've been working with IT for actually more than 17 years, perhaps even closer to 20 years. I've been working in different things. I'm, as my colleagues will admit, I normally say I'm just a marketing guy, and that's because I have a marketing background. I don't have an IT background, but I've worked with IT for a lot of years, and I've worked with IT in different connections, both as an operational manager, but also as an HR director, where I've been hiring people in Denmark. I'm Danish. So I also have that angle in it. And then I've been working with, let's call it IT outstaffing, or IT nearshoring, offshoring. It's basically the same name, or the same, many names for the same area. And I've been doing that for quite a while. I've been working with Cairo for over 13 years now. And before that, I was working with Ukraine and with Pakistan. So I feel I have a pretty good mixture of knowing about IT organizations and recruitments and the operations in Denmark, working a lot with Cairo, and also working with Ukraine and Pakistan, where I was very heavily involved in the acquisitions of companies and running companies there as well. Yep, let's just go along. So if we look at CrossWorkers, we're a Danish company, started in Denmark, but as you see, we've tried to conquer the world like everybody else. Today we have our company in Denmark. It's basically a sales company for the European market. We have a company in Bahrain, which is in principle the same, just for the GCC market. And then we have what we basically refer to as our production in Cairo. And that's also why we call ourselves CrossWorkers. It's basically to not make it too sophisticated and so forth, because end of the day, we all work and we work across borders. We work with different cultures, with different technologies, and we stretch it as much as we can. So when we look at our management, it's both in Cairo and in Denmark. We have sales in different ways in some of the countries that you see here. And we work both with our own salespeople, and we work with ambassadors for us in those areas. And then we have what I call production in Cairo, which is, of course, our HR, both the recruitment, the HR in terms of personnel and development and so forth. And we have a department called Service Delivery Management, in short, SDM, which is a group of people who is working both with our teams in Cairo, but also with our customers directly. But I might add that all our employees, even interns in CrossWorkers, work directly with customers. It's not the way we work is not through a project manager or something like that. It's every team member works directly with the customer. So everybody is exposed to culture. Everybody is exposed to the customer and so forth. And then we run our marketing and our finance are also out of Egypt. So that's kind of the setup that we have. If we look a little bit into what it is that we're doing, there are loads of different delivery models. Many still refer to this, the last one, the project-based delivery model, where you basically, as a customer, have something that you need to do. You ask somebody to do it for you based on a specification and offer. We deliver at this and that date, at this and that price, and with these and that functionalities. That's the old-fashioned way of doing IT development, in my eyes. Of course, there's still a lot of projects going on, and there's still reasons to have projects. But one of the interesting things are that as soon as you sign a contract on a project, then customer and supplier becomes basically against each other, because the customer wants as much as possible out of the contract, and the supplier wants to get it delivered as fast as possible. So they basically have a conflicting interest in the project. That can work in some cases, but in many cases, it doesn't work. In all cases, you will spend a whole lot of time on the contract, you will spend a whole lot of time on the specifications, and you will spend a whole lot of time on project management and follow up and discussing change requests and bugs and all these things and so forth. And one thing for sure, I'm almost an old man, and I've never ever seen a project where the customer actually knew what they wanted from the very beginning. They always change 5 minutes after they start, and then we're into change requests and so forth. You can also work as in the model I call time material, where you basically say, well, oh, I just buy hours as we go along. You never know how much you're going to buy. The people working on a time material contract never really know when they have to work or not. and so forth, but it can work in some cases, often in small assignments. And then we have the dedicated team, which is what we do and have been doing for many years now. And this is the model that I've been working with for a long time. Sorry. Always get distracted by the phone, like everybody else.
Well, actually, that's in our favor. There's a question, if it's possible. There's a question. Perfect. There's a question from LinkedIn. Someone is asking about how about the years of there's two questions actually. The first question is the opportunities for the juniors or for the fresh grads working in Europe without any previous experience. I think what they mean is it possible for someone who's just freshly graduated to apply to any of the companies working in Europe? You can answer this question, then I'll ask you the other question.
Yeah, if the question goes towards whether a junior should apply for a job in Europe, it's not something that we do. It's going to be tough, and that basically both accounts for juniors and seniors. What we often see is that we see people applying for jobs in Europe. They see very high salaries. People or the companies hiring them sometimes tend to forget about all the taxes, the high living costs, and all these things which comes with living in Europe, because the system is just totally different. And I've seen so many, of course, some people crack it. They get through, they get good careers, they get very good jobs. I also see a lot of people which actually is, maybe they're seniors, they're having good salaries, good living standards actually in Egypt, moving to the European Union, and then end up with a reduced living standards because the salary is just not enough to keep them, at the same level. And it's really sad to see that. Maybe this gets a little bit political, but yes, I'm Danish, but as I normally say, my every second heartbeat is Egyptian blood. So if I look at Egypt, nobody benefits Egypt by moving out of Egypt. If you want to help your country, you stay in Egypt, you work in Egypt, you generate cash to Egypt. And a company like ours is a good example on that. We basically generate a lot of foreign currency into the country each month. Whereas if you go and work in Germany, yes, you might have a chance for a good job on the personal side, but that is something for you only personally. It will not help Egypt, it will not help your family and friends. So I don't know if that answers the question. I think for a junior, it's a tough, really tough thing to go to Europe directly.
Thank you for the extensive answer. And with another question, was how many, it's similar to the first question, how many years of experience does it require to get a job, I think in Europe as well?
Yeah, but whether it's in Europe or in Egypt or anywhere in the world, it's from 0 to 100. Basically, I never hire the seniority, I hire the person. And some people get to be a senior level faster than others. Others never get to really be a senior on that, even though they've been working for a long time. Of course, there is a balance in this, but seniority is not necessarily something about number of years, the degree of education and so forth. It's about the mind and the way you transform that mind into actual deliveries.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure.
There's two more questions, but would you like to take them, or would you like to continue presentation a while?
Let's take the two questions now, and then we'll continue a little bit.
There is a question that is it possible for fresh grads to work remotely? And if so, what is the required technology or skills needed to qualify us to work remotely?
Yeah.
Qualify them to work remotely.
Remotely work is what we in Denmark call the new black. Everybody's talking about remotely work and so forth. If you and it's an outcome of especially the COVID pandemic and so forth. If we look at the pandemic and what has happened and so forth, there's always been a delay between Europe and the European and the Egyptian market. What we see in Europe is that people are getting back into the offices. Fewer and fewer people are working remotely.
Mm-hmm.
If I look at it from a business owner perspective, what makes a company? A company is made out of the company culture. And the company culture is created by being together. You don't create a company culture by being remote. Then it's a lot of individuals sitting around doing their own job. If you want to create a company culture, and that's actually what makes a company, then you have to be together. And especially for young people with less experience, their focus in life should be to sit close together with people with a lot of experience to actually gain that experience. And they will never get that by sitting home working remotely. So my personal view on this is people should work together in a company. As I normally say, if it was so smart working remotely, why didn't we do it before COVID? Because all the technologies were there. There's nothing new. We were just forced to use it for a while. But if we push it in that direction and start working at home, at the kitchen table, and so forth, then we will lose the connection that we have as employees in a company with a common culture. And then there's another point which is heavily overlooked, especially I know about Egypt, maybe also other countries, and that is when you work with IT, if you want to work with Europe, there's something called GDPR, and GDPR really makes it difficult working remotely because there's a lot of things connected to GDPR and the IT security, which you simply cannot guarantee by working remotely. So remote work, in my opinion, yes, I know it's a hot topic. I know it's super nice not to commute in a bus or something like that, but everybody will lose on it in the end. Nobody will save money as a company because you still have to have the ability to offer desks and so forth. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I totally agree with your, with all the points that you've mentioned. There was a request if you can raise your voice a bit, if you can be closer to the mic, if it's okay.
I'll try and get closer.
Perfect. Thank you. There is a question that is there an effective training period for juniors? What happens when a junior joins CrossWorkers? I guess it's specifically for CrossWorkers.
Yeah. I can answer it in two ways. One way is you're kicked in on the team right away. Basically, you when you're hired as a junior or even as an intern, you get there, you have 1 day of introduction, you get your PC and your laptop and so forth, and then you start working with the team. And you're in the dialogue with customers right away. When that is said, sorry, do you still hear me? I just lost picture.
Yes, we're still here.
Okay. When that is said, of course, we take care, we have development plans and so forth, and that's a natural thing for all companies to do. We also use mentors, older employees, mentors for younger employees and so forth. But there's no long time where you basically get to understand what it's all about and so forth. You get right on the job in right away. So I'll just try and reshare as a slideshow again here. Yeah, here we go. All right, let me get back to the slide. Dedicated teams, that's actually what we do. And it's a different model. Maybe some of you heard about it, some of you don't know about it. So just shortly, yeah, sorry, but I'm just losing the picture. Are you also losing the picture as I am?
No, the picture is still here, and we have a question regarding the slide, but please take your time, explain it, and then I'll tell you.
Let me comment on this dedicated team first, because that's the core of what we do. When we get a customer, they have a need. We define together with the customer what team they need. They might need a team of 5 people, different skills, different levels, and so forth. And then we hire that team to work for that company or that customer. And they work dedicated for that customer. They're still employees with CrossWorkers, but they work specifically with that customer. So they really get into working with that customer, long-term relationships, friendships with the customer's employees and so forth, often traveling both to Egypt and to Europe and so forth. That means that you work together as a team. You look at things in the same way. You build up domain knowledge both to the technology and to the company. And that means that you can work much faster and so forth. And that is the tendency in Europe that you work more like that instead of working like in a project-based model. Yeah. And that is what we do. You can go into details with the flexibility, scalability, and so forth, and what the differences are in the free models. And of course, there are more models, but these, in many ways, are the kind of the mother models for delivering. Yeah, and there was a question to the slide.
Yes, someone was asking dedicated team as managed service or dedicated team for fully outsource.
When we talk about a dedicated team, it's a team that works together with, for instance, a Danish customer or a Norwegian customer, a German customer, or whatever it is. So they work as what we call a distributed team. So a team that sits in different locations, some in Europe, some in Egypt. But those 2 places, they normally sit together, not remotely. And the customer will have the project management. We will have everything else, and we of course also take care of the team and so forth. So we're not just an HR company hiring people in. We're hiring people. We are really good at that. Have a huge database, which I will encourage everybody to sign up for, and we make it happen together with the customer. So it's a symbiosis that works together. All right. Perfect. Okay, I'll dare and jump to the next slide. Hopefully. So if we look at the delivery model that we have, it's 100% export. We don't serve the Egyptian market. Everything we do is export, meaning that we're generating cash for the Egyptian country and the Egyptian society. Everybody is dedicated to a team. There's nobody sitting on the bench doing nothing. And we work on these long-term connections with customers because everybody's hired for that customer. If a customer would then terminate, then the employees are still CrossWorkers' responsibility, and we then try and move them to new customers. Or we might use them for a period of time on internal systems or that kind until we can move them to a new customer. So it's a lower risk model because the contingency is longer. It's a little bit like the difference between having a building, hiring it out as a hotel room, or hiring it out as an apartment. The apartments, they will stay there maybe for 20 years, 30 years, whereas the hotel, you never know whether it's booked tomorrow or not. And that is the risk also for employer or employees on a project-based model, that if you suddenly lose projects, if things are getting cut, well, then there's basically no work. Here we have long-term engagements. long-term terminations and so forth, so we have time to react. The customers have the project management. We don't, but we do everything else, and we take care of everything from seating, office management, bus services, medical insurances, education, all these kind of things. That's on our shoulders, and we do that because we understand the Egyptian context and environment and so forth. Yeah. Any questions to that?
No, we have a question. It's a general question regarding working in Europe as from one of the international.
Stay in Egypt. Stay in Egypt. Egypt needs you.
Yes, just as you said before, it's much easier here. We have a question from one of our audience in Nigeria. He says, I'm a computer science graduate with 7 years working experience with cloud computing certification. He says, is there any chance of getting a job in Europe? And if so, are there any visa sponsorship jobs in Europe? And what are the criteria for employment?
That's a very broad question. I cannot answer that. Again, it's a person, it's not the number of experience and so forth. It's visa procedures in Europe is quite tough, and it takes time, and yeah, but I cannot really give a good answer to that question, to be honest.
Too complicated, I guess.
I'm just a marketing guy.
We have another question from LinkedIn. It asks about, should I have certification to work in Europe or just have experience? Would experience be enough?
The big problem, I can see lots of questions about how to work in Europe. I honestly think it's a stupid idea to put all your eggs in that basket and try to go to Europe, especially if you don't have a long and extensive knowledge and experience and so forth. Get that experience, be modest about it, and get that experience. When you have that experience, then you're more attractive to a market in Europe also. As an old HR director who've hired a lot of people, I have a personal saying that you hire for attitude and you train for skills, because when you hire somebody within IT, you hire somebody who have the ability to work with the technology of tomorrow. So what you've done before only shows whether or not you're capable of adapting into new technologies and so forth. And of course, somebody in Europe does not know universities. They don't know the educations in an Egyptian context. They don't relate to that in the same way. So it's the person you hire, and then you will, in all cases, be tested quite a lot before you start working. Because they don't have the same feeling of your resume and so forth. So yeah, I don't know if it answers the question.
I think it does. So we have 2 more questions. Would you like to continue the content?
Let's just take it. I asked for it, so I'll answer for it.
Okay. The other question is, what are the chances of success in managing digital marketing platforms for the European client? And what are their preferences or in this specialty? Preferred social media or digital marketing platforms in Europe?
Not sure I got that, to be honest.
I think it might be for someone maybe from a digital marketing specialists working for things and things, asking about what European clients prefer. I know that for some, in Egypt, we prefer Facebook, for example.
There's always lots of different vibes on that. To be honest, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, or whatever it is, that's just a tool. And tool changes. If it's not enough to know a tool, it's needed to know what to use a tool for. So if you're an expert on a tool and cannot really use it, then it's worthless. If you know how to use a tool and know where you want to go, then it has a value, and then you can always get the knowledge of the platforms and so forth. But that varies from country to country, and it varies from years to years. So there's nothing that stays.
Okay, great. So I guess it's according to the country. So this is the right answer within this question.
But you know, I had my marketing education 30 years ago or something like that. So the concepts that I was learning at that time, where the internet was just really starting, was based on what you did 20 years before that time. But it's still the same principles that you use, just with a different tool. And sometimes people tend to forget that it's not the tool, it's the strategy behind it that actually works. And then you find a tool that actually do the trick that you want to do.
Great, thank you. There start to come, the questions are increasing. We have someone asking, how are you dealing with contracts, income taxes, and insurance? I guess he is asking about the developers working in Egypt.
Everybody is hired according to Egyptian law, social insurance, everything, medical insurances, and so forth. Of course, we have contracts and NDAs, and we do trainings in GDPR and so forth. So, of course, we abide by all the legislation which is in place in Egypt. It's a real company, so to say.
So I think what he meant is there any problems seeing you when it comes to contracts or with all the things regarding the insurance and the different rules or the different things happening here in Egypt from what it's happening in Europe? So
our employees are hired in Egypt. They're not hired in Europe. Our employees are mainly hired in Egypt. So of course we abide by Egyptian law and in all ways. And then we have a lot of benefits on top of our salaries and so forth, which is of course a part of it as well. And then of course there's NDAs, there are things related to the GDPR and data security, which we also handle, but that's more like the process on how we do things.
A question from the same person, I think. Do you have a referral program where I can find open jobs?
We have a Facebook page, we have a LinkedIn page, and we have a place on our own website where you can sign up and upload CV and so forth to us, and then we'll look at that. It will be in the last slide.
Great, thank you. I'm sure we will try to share it as well in the comments of the post of the streaming, so that anyone could join it if they would like, or to check it, to apply on it. We have a question regarding the opportunities for juniors, which you answered before, and a specific question regarding the vacancies for SAP HCM. But I think that's we can ask in the end of the session. We can ask about all of the profiles, job profiles that you are looking for as CrossWorkers, or that you have open on your career site. We also have a question asking why are there a lot of European companies don't hire talents from outside Europe, even if the job is remote. So is that maybe he's wondering if there is any discrimination over there's preferred nationalities over Middle Eastern I think that's what they mean.
I think some of it is explained in culture, some of it is explained in lack of knowledge, some of it is explained by legislation. And one of the things which we've seen over the last couple of years has been the implementation of the GDPR. That is a European thing. And to be honest, very, very, very few people in Egypt actually has a clue about what GDPR is in reality. But in reality, GDPR sets some rules on when you work outside of Europe. And it just makes it a lot more difficult. And in principle, it means that if you're a single individual working remotely for let's say a German company out of Cairo, the German company have the responsibility to train you, to test you, and to check up on facilities in order to make sure that it's abiding by the legislation in regards to GDPR. That's a little bit difficult if you're a German company and has to do that. When we do it, we are a company and everybody is hired in our company, and the company can then sign on these documents and so forth and take that responsibility. So that's one of the things which is quite misunderstood, honestly, when you get outside of Egypt, because outside of Europe, because it's not just a matter of having an internet connection and being able to reach a server in Europe. It's also a whole lot more than that. Yep. Should we try and move on, or should we take a question on?
Well, there's a question that I think we can keep till the end with the asking about the job profiles or the open vacancies regarding what is the most important thing that applicants should have, the skills, or what you prefer. Is it the technicality? Is it the attitude? Is it why do you choose an applicant over another? Or how do you differentiate or
Okay, let's, I suggest that we take all these specific questions about, which is basically, how can I get a job? Let's not take those questions, because then we can answer 200 questions for each individual. The general things are, the way we do it, first of all, we hire for attitude and we train for skills. Of course, we try to get the right skills from the beginning. So it's the person, it's not the skills. If you're really, really good computer science and can do whatever things and so forth, but do not have the right personality, you're out. If you have the right personality, but maybe don't have the skills, you're in. That's a general assumption. When we do it, we will send an automated test, which is made specifically for the job. The candidate will take that test. But the candidate will not take that test unless they are through our HR process. So the first thing we look at is the personality, language skills, and attitude and so forth. If they pass there, then they get a test. If they pass that, they get a personal interview where they are then again tested. And I get the feeling that we have a pretty tough approach to testing technical skills. That's the reputation we have. So that's how we attack that. But if we could concentrate the questions on something a little bit more general and not an individual person and specific skills and jobs and so forth, are appreciated.
Perfect. So let's continue the presentation. And so then I will pause for a while. Yes.
This is just a quick overview. In the old days, you would be working, having a company in the US. You would outsource to India, or you would go across the world and so forth. Now there's a tendency to also look at time zones because of the agility in development. You simply have to be working at the same time. And therefore, the US are focusing on Mid-America, South America, Europe is focusing on the vertical, meaning Africa, North Africa, and so forth, and Asia is focusing on things which are in Asia. So there are two factors, which is the distance in flight time, basically, and the time zone. Egypt is very, very well located for Europe in that sense, because it's more or less the same time zone, and the flight time is very limited. So it's a 4-hour flight from Berlin, for instance. That gives a very attractive position for Egypt in the present market. So that's just to give you an idea of that. Some companies, some of our competing companies, they would say, well, we can work for the US, we'll just work US time zone from Egypt or something like that. We don't do that. We basically want people to come to work in the morning, leave in the afternoon, do their 8 hours, go home to their family, be with their family. That's where you refuel and so forth. We don't want somebody who's living at night and sleeping in the day and never see their family and so forth. We want people where there's this work-life balance. And that's because we come with a Scandinavian approach to things. That's how we do things. So that was just a quick overview of the big picture of the world, so to say. If we go a little bit down in details on things, when you work on a distance, there's a need for a lot more discipline, because it's so easy not, well, I came home late last night, I'll sleep for another hour, or I'll go and fix that thing I need to do at the post office now, or whatever it is. You need to have discipline. You have to be there in the morning. You have to perform the work. You have to be at hand and so forth. That is something that you have to do no matter that your customer is away. So we basically have our people working inside our company. We do time registration on coming and going and so forth, but the customer will, of course, do the time registration on the actual tasks so that they can work with that in their whole team and so forth. There's a tendency, sorry to say, that deadlines is a little bit more deadlines in Europe than it is in Egypt. We have to keep our deadlines. We have to report on it. And it's, you can basically reach to a point where you see, we cannot make that deadline. Then tell it up front. Tell it so that the customer has a chance to move around it in some different ways. If you reach the deadline and you're not finished, then it's a problem. But if you say it up front, well, things can happen, and we can work with that and so forth. So that's really important. I also always say, well, be honest, because that is the truth is always the easiest thing to remember. Nobody wants to have a small lie about, well, it wasn't this and this, that. Rather tell, sorry, I made a mistake. We all make mistakes. I personally make a lot of mistakes every day. And hopefully I also make some good things every day. But we all make mistakes. There's nothing bad in that. Just don't do the same mistake twice. So be honest about those things. And then one of the big, and it was also on the first slide, communication. Communication and communication and communication. It's so damn important that we communicate, we say what we do, how we do it, when we do it, and so forth, because otherwise the customer sitting abroad will not know. They don't have the privilege of opening the door and say, well, how are we doing today? Well, they don't see you if you're working late at night to research on a problem or something like that. You have to explain it. So communication is extremely important when we work on a remote basis with a customer. And the other is culture. Culture and communication, the two big C's, as I call them. Yeah. Oh, we did 2 slides now. Now I'll try and see if I can get it to move. Yeah, so the communication is something that we focus a lot on. We travel a lot. We have a lot of people going to Europe, visiting customers, being there for a week, meeting up with them, trying to understand the context of what this solution is going to be used for. Because it's not always about coding, it's also about understanding the business that we want to make a solution to. Nobody do coding for the fun of the coding. People do coding because they need to solve business problems. So understand the business part. That's so important. And by traveling, meeting each other, having customers coming to Cairo, being there, going out, having dinner together and so forth, you start to understand the persons that you're working with on the distance. And you will soon find out that we often have the same interests. And it's important to connect in that way. The tech part is the easy part, because that's the same, language. It's like math. It's more or less dictated how that works. But if we understand the people, if we understand the context, then it makes sense to work with these things. And then take initiative. Don't sit there, wait for somebody else to tell you what to do. Take the initiative and come up with your ideas, be part of the problem solution, and not just wait till somebody else tells you what to do and so forth. So that's some of the main takes on the communication part and why it's important to talk and meet each other, eat together, and things like that. Right? You just interrupt if you build up too big of a base of questions.
It's still good. It's still good, don't worry.
Okay, I will not go too much into details with this, but I will encourage you to look up this guy, Hofstad. It's an old research which was done on the basis of IBM, because they were present in a lot of different countries all over the world. But it basically looks at the different cultures and what is different. And you can actually go in to this website, punch in Egypt, punch in Germany, punch in Norway, punch in Tunisia, or whatever, and then you will see how those countries are ranking on these dimensions, which is shown here. And this is just Egypt versus Denmark. As I said, this is the basis of the way we teach our cultural education in CrossWorkers. I'll not go deep into the details of this, but just to highlight one thing, for instance, the power distance. In Egypt, power distance is big, Denmark small. So you basically have a lot of respect for your managers, what you could say and do and so forth. In Denmark, the respect is much lower in the sense that you're allowed to say more and do more and so forth. When I started working with Egypt, for instance, I was really annoyed because when I walked into a room, everybody stopped working and stood up, because that's the way they've been doing all their life in school and so forth. But I didn't need to say anything to everybody in the room. I just needed to talk with one guy or one woman. So why do everybody stop working? Well, that's the Egyptian way of showing respect, but it has the contrary to me, because I'm not expecting it as a Dane. So that's just one example. And there are no right and wrong in this. Everything is right. When we hire people, there was a lot of questions about hiring and personalities and what we look for and so forth. We look for individuals, we look for the personality, and therefore, for instance, we look for people who drag down the average. This is an average for Egypt. We want them to drag it down a little bit. And then on the other hand, we want to teach our customers that, well, there is a difference here. You need to handle it this and that way. So I encourage everybody who wants to know something about culture, go in and have a look at this because it's actually really good. It's old, but it works. The world doesn't change as fast as American book writers tends to think it does. So it's a good place to start if you want to understand culture, and culture is extremely important in this context. So cultural aspects, well, in the left you see that, well, we're all crazy about whatever things and so forth. These are football fans from different nations. We look ridiculous, all of us, but we have a community about something. So there's also a lot of things that is binding us together. And people tend to look at the stereotypes of what is dividing us. Look at what is connecting us. If you're working with IT, well, then your counterpart in Germany or Norway or wherever is also working with IT. You have the common interest. If you are interested in football, it's a common interest. So build on those things which you agree on, instead of looking at saying, well, you speak one language, I speak another one, different religions and so forth. There's a lot of things which is the same. Build on that, and then you will find out that everybody basically have the same wishes in life and so forth. And there's a lot to build on. So don't address all the wrong things, but emphasize all the things that are good. And then you will actually understand better. And then have the interest for it. Try to learn how to deal with these things. Show the interest. If you show the interest, you will be much better. And that will be some of the competences that you will actually gain, which makes you more attractive to the market. When I look at Egyptian companies having the wish to export outside of Egypt to Europe and so forth, one of the biggest challenges that I see as a Dane knowing Egypt pretty well is that managers in Egyptian companies don't understand Europe very well and think that they can do it in the Egyptian way. And we have to put aside our culture and work internationally instead of working based on that we should make everybody understand things in the way we think is the right way, because it's not. So culture and communication, two extremely important things when you work in an international environment. Yeah. Any relevant questions at this time?
We are getting the questions regarding the opportunities, the open vacancies, the salaries, but things regarding the hiring, not about the culture. So we could continue with the culture first, and then I guess we will wrap up that later. But it's up to you.
Highlighting a few things, working with different cultures. Europe has a big focus, I said it before, on deadlines, punctuality, being at time, right time and place for meetings and so forth. In Denmark, if I'm going for a meeting, if I'm 15 minutes late, then I have to call them first and say, I'm really, really, really sorry. There was a mess up with traffic or whatever it is and so forth. And they will still joke with me when I come, say, well, why weren't you here on time? If I'm half an hour late, don't bother coming because you lost the business already. That's one of the things which is important. So one of the reasons that I bring customers to Egypt is to show them traffic there, right? Because if they've been on the ring road in Cairo, then they know, okay, this can jam up. It can cost an hour or so. They understand and so forth. Time and speed is important. And that's because an hour is very expensive in Europe. So time and speed is really important. We don't have a lot of time. Sometimes we want to really push on getting something ready, published and start working and so forth, instead of having a lot of time just waiting to do the perfect version. There's a little bit launch and learn more in Europe than compared to Egypt. Our working week is different. we work Monday to Friday, you work Sunday to Thursday. And of course, there's differences in public vacation days and so forth. And then I just need to see what is behind the picture. Yeah, breaks, that's right. In Europe, you tend to, and it differs from country to country, but most of the European countries, you would go and get your coffee and you would go back to your computer and you would work again. You're not taking as many breaks away from your desk as you would normally do in an Egyptian setup. So you're very much anchored to your desk and you work there, you go for a meeting and things like that, of course. And of course, you go and pick up coffee or whatever you need. But breaks has a different structure. So if you're off for a break and say, well, we're off for a break. If you're away for half an hour, then that's a problem for a European customer. Whereas it might not be the same problem for an Egyptian employer. Yeah. So, yeah. Again, a few takes on this. Be international. If you want to work international, be international. Don't be Egyptian. Just as I shouldn't be Danish, I should also be international. Because if we, of course, we should remember our culture, our country. We should be proud of that. We're all proud of that. I have a flag on my because I love my country, and I know Egyptians also value their country a lot. But we should step a little bit out of that and into this common room where we're all international and together. And then you need to invest in your colleagues, whether it's the customer side or the offshore side, and integrate on these matters and so forth. And then, yeah, I just try to compact it and go from we know it all because we know how to do things to be interested, to learn from others, so that you have that attitude. So, yeah, I think we're close to the end. I'm just trying to go through some of this a little bit faster and so forth. So I'll just go through the last couple of slides fast because we're running out of time. Okay?
It's okay for us if you can give us a more 15 minutes more or 30 minutes more.
It's okay for me. It's okay for me. So when you interact on the human side, you should focus on the business. Don't focus so much on technology because technology is the easy part of this. We can choose whatever technology and so forth. We can drill down on that and find the right technology and work really well with that. But it all starts with the business problem that we want to make a solution to. And that's also why you need to remember the context and why we do these things. Why is it important that a spare part can get through the system really, really fast to the end user? Well, it's because if it doesn't in a European setup, in a European context, then it has a lot of consequences, which you might not know because it's a different context than in Egypt. For instance, when you talk about farming in a country like Denmark, well, it really runs as a pharmaceutical production with very small variations and so forth. So if you suddenly cannot feed all your animals, they die if you don't get that spare part ready, because everything is hooked up to technology and so forth. We already talked about the acceleration of visiting each other, travel, be open-minded. I know it's never a problem to ask an Egyptian to travel to Europe, but it's also, you should also know that Egypt is a fantastic country to invite customers to. It has so much culture. It has so much interesting things to see. And therefore, that's actually a really good part of the marketing of Egypt, that the Egyptian culture is as it is. We talked about skills and so forth. And we need to, if you want to work with a foreign set of colleagues or a company in a foreign country, you need to do it. You can simply not do it if you don't interact with them. So you should become friends with the people that you work with. And that can sometimes, there's a lot of people which are really, really, really gifted working with technologies, but who are a little bit introvert, and they really have to force themselves a little bit to actually engage more with the people, because that's where you get a lot of the value out of. And I think final slide before, 2 slides more, and then we're there. It does not work if you don't integrate things. So you need to have the same time registration. You need to have the same information, the same accesses like people working in Europe. Otherwise, it's like an A and a B team, right? It has to be 2 A teams, and that's important to be equal in that sense. You need to integrate into the organization, both on a technical level, but foremost on a personal level. And as we talked about already, main focus is to look at the communication, understand the requirements, and remember to document your work and so forth. That's some of the basic things. Then there's a slide on GDPR. It's a little bit boring, to be honest, and we already talked a little bit about it. But I can only encourage people to actually understand GDPR. It's extremely important for European customers that this is understood, and it's not something that should be neglected. I see a real problem for Egypt not fully understanding GDPR legislation, because one thing is getting a checklist and abiding by whatever things and so forth, but you have to understand it, you have to live it. It's a little bit like IT security, which is connected and then not connected with GDPR, but it's really, really important for European customers that this is actually understood by employees sitting abroad. That's one of the things which is lagging a little bit. And then the last slide, which I can only encourage everybody to look at if they're interested in working in a company like CrossWorkers, and that's the ways that you can sign up on our pages on social media. And we also have a possibility to upload CV and so forth, so that you can be in the loop for jobs, maybe now, maybe later, because we follow people over the years, and maybe you're not in the scope for a job now, but you might be 3 years from now. So let's connect now. Let's keep you in the loop, and let us know who you are and so forth, and then maybe we will meet now, maybe we'll meet later. So sorry that it was a little bit fast in the end, but I just wanted to go through all the slides. So let's finish off with a few questions if you feel there's anything that we should address.
Thank you so much for everything. It was really, really interesting. And I think we need to shed light on the importance of the cultures. Everyone is asking about the opportunities, how I can reach. I work in Europe, work with European clients, even if it's from Egypt, work remotely, but they're still haven't really grasped the importance about the culture and about all the details that you mentioned about studying and reading about GDPR and reading about the different things, reading about how to make sure that they're fit first before jumping on to the opportunities and everything. As you mentioned, you have your websites, your links on Facebook, LinkedIn, and everything. I would advise everyone to go check the websites and the links to make sure that some people were asking about the branches, about if you have a branch in Egypt, which I know that you do. There was another question.
Our location in Cairo is in New Cairo in Tegama, where we have a building from where we work. And we are also considering other locations at the moment, but right now it's New Cairo.
So we have a question regarding, is the salaries that you provide with CrossWorkers, is it in Egyptian pounds or is it in USDs or Egyptian, any international currencies?
Okay, so I'm a guy who follows the law. So that should be enough answer to that question. Yeah. It's actually illegal to pay out money in any other currency than Egyptian pounds in Egypt. So of course we pay in Egyptian pounds, and what we've done, for instance, both recently in October, November, when there was a fall of the Egyptian pound, and again in January, and also 6 years ago when there was a devaluation at that time. Each time there's been a thing like that, we look at it very, very thoroughly, and we change the salary. So, for instance, this time here, we changed salaries in November, and we also made the normal regulations that we normally do in January, so that there's a balance in these things. So we, of course, we look at that, but it's simply illegal to pay out money in currency in Egypt, which is not Egyptian pounds. So, of course, we abide by the law.
Thank you for
a small comment to the picture there, because I didn't think of it before, but look at that picture and you see our culture, because where are the managers in that? In an Egyptian picture, we would have the managers and the owners sitting in front on two big chairs, and everybody behind. The managers here are basically covered by hands and so forth. And that's very much the Scandinavian approach to things.
It's great. Thank you for pointing that out. And yes, I can point you out in the picture, and you can see Fouad as well. And both of your faces are not that apparent, but there's looks very fun, and there's a good vibe to it. Yeah. We have another question regarding the provided profiles that you have open, but that's, as we said, on the page, on the career page. But I would add to that, is there any other profiles other from the ones mentioned on your career page?
What we do is we post the jobs that we have. You will find that on the website. They're there, normal job posts and so forth. What I will encourage people to do is to upload CVs, because when we look for new people, when we get new customers in, the first thing we do is we look in our own database. We have a quite extensive database and very well organized database. So we always look in our database first. So if you want to be one of the first to be looked at, you have to be in the database. We also would post jobs and so forth, but sign up for the database, and we will also remember you to update your CV if we don't have a position that matches now. We don't know what we will need 2 months from now. Sometimes it's different technologies. We have a very wide span of technologies. Mobile technologies, .NET technologies, open source technologies, and so forth, embedded software, and there's a large degree of different technologies. So sign up with your CV, and of course look at the positions that are actively being promoted at the moment, but it changes all the time.
Great, thank you for that. So that there's always a chance. Just make sure that you take the first step. And then, if there's a chance, you will definitely contact them. There is a question that I would rephrase a bit, asking about what is the benefit of joining one of the companies like CrossWorkers that works with European clients over from just working remotely or working on his own with European clients directly?
It has to do with the GDPR legislation and so forth. It's difficult actually to work remotely. And if you're working remotely, you will be the first one to be cut away also. When you work in a company, I cannot answer for our competitors, but if you work in a company like ours, we of course hire you. We pay your salaries on time. For instance, now it's Ramadan. We are paying out salaries already on the 22nd because of Ramadan and so forth. You get your pay. We take care of social insurance. We take care of medical insurance. We take care of bus transportation. We take care of education. You will be in an environment with a lot of really, really smart people, which knows a lot of things, which is interesting. You can always reach out to colleagues and so forth. And then, of course, we also engage with what I would call more professional customers, because the professional customers cannot allow themselves to work with a remote employee there, a remote employee there, and a remote. That's simply too fragile for them. So you get into a more trusted and more confident frame where you actually also get exposed to something which is, in my mind, more interesting. And you don't get exploited but there's a lot of companies out there who wants to exploit, having people working remotely and so forth. And then sometimes it's really sad to see.
Great. We have 3 questions from LinkedIn. One of them was, is there an evaluation metric that the employee is being evaluated on? And how frequent is it? Is there a kind of periodic evaluation for the employees?
Yeah. The reason I laugh is because sometimes I get that from some of my staff that, well, shouldn't we make a matrix and evaluate on education, experience, and so forth? And I always put it aside and say, well, we evaluate each person. We don't put them into a system. We evaluate the person. We try to do it with automatic testing and so forth also, but there's always an evaluation of the person, not a mathematic formula for that. When you are employed in CrossWorkers, you normally get a personal development plan, and we evaluate the person each year so that we can give feedback and so forth, but of course we also give feedback in the day-to-day life and tend to do it like that. And then we're also working with a system where we ask some questions quarterly about a lot of the factors that surround you in the environment, everything from the physical environment to the task to the management to the everything and so forth, and we get that data in. It's a quite extensive tool, and we get that data in. We look at it. We see, well, how can we improve on these things, and what can we actually do? What sort of actions can we do, and how can we prioritize that? So we constantly try to get better and better and better and better and better. Sometimes we say no to things because, well, we don't believe in it, but generally. I would say that we have a pretty good working environment and a close contact and so forth. Is everybody happy? Well, hopefully, but it will never be 100% that is happy. The last time, for instance, we had some feedback. Why don't we have more PlayStations and things like that? Well, that is something that I don't personally believe in. Because it sends a wrong signal to customers. Because you don't find it in Europe. So if a European customer walks into the office and find that 3 guys are sitting there playing PlayStation, they will look at it and say, well, are you not working? So there are things where we have to cope with different cultures and where we also sometimes have to learn from some of the mistakes that has already been made in Europe. Because there's a tendency that there's a little bit of a delay sometimes in those things. But we try to create a good environment where we have good tools and good environment when we work, and we work normally the 8 hours, and then we refuel with our family and friends and so forth.
That's really very nice to hear. Very comforting. Thank you. There's a problem asking about the opportunities for Egyptian units in data science and machine learning, specifically with these profiles available in Europe. And there's another one asking about embedded system engineers in Egypt and in Europe as well. So I think you mentioned something about the embedded systems.
If we start with the embedded part, embedded software development is actually one of the focus points or focus areas of the Egyptian government in the forthcoming plan.
Yes.
One of the challenges with working with embedded software in Egypt is that you normally have to work with devices, and unfortunately, it's not as easy to get your devices in because they basically get caught up in customs and so forth. So that's a restriction that I hope that will be loosened up a little bit. But embedded software is just one discipline among many. And yes, there's a need. There's a huge need for that all over the world, especially with Internet of Things and so forth, really moving fast. We do have embedded software development also inside CrossWorkers. So it's definitely there, yeah. What was the other question, sorry? It was
asking about the data science and machine learning.
Yeah. Again, in my mind, it's a discipline, it's a skill, like being a really, really skilled iOS developer or a Java developer or whatever. It's the need is there, definitely. We've also been doing that kind of work for European customers. So it's definitely there.
We have, I think, 3 more questions if they don't increase. There's a question that I personally like asking about how did the work culture change in the last decade, and what do we need to look for the upcoming year? What are the skills that would be essential, and what will not? The things that will not be important. What should we look for in the upcoming years as of personal? I think asking about the personal skills or the skill set that is needed that will be trending.
Yeah, you will find people who will, say that everything changes and a whole new world order and so forth. I'm not that kind of a person. I'm an old grumpy guy who thinks that maybe sometimes some of these trendsetters and books and so forth move a little bit faster than reality. I think what is important is to be really good at what you do. Focus on your if you're a technical person, focus on your technical skills, but keep a mind open for actually also focusing on the cultural side, as I've emphasized quite a lot, and also be more interested in the business side, because end of the day, there's no development unless there's a business problem to crack. So understanding business and focusing also on the cultural side is in my mind important, because no matter what, we will work more and more closely together across borders. There's no doubt about that. The big thing right now is, working from home, not getting out of bed and still performing your work. I think that increased quite a lot due to COVID. It will decrease again. That's my opinion on that. I think it's a major mistake, as I've seen companies saying, well, we don't need our building anymore. We will sell it and we will just, everybody will work from home. That will not work in practice. People need to be together to get this community going and learn from each other. You don't learn anything from anybody by sitting home in bed doing your programming and so forth. Yes, you can do it for a day or so. Why did it work? during COVID, it worked because we all knew each other before COVID. If we start to create a team with people who doesn't know each other and then put them at home, working from home, then they will not work in the same way. So I think it's an illusion that everything will be remote work, working from home and so forth. It gives other possibilities. It also gives a better market for a country like Egypt because more customers on the customer side say, well, okay, it actually works. Then we can also work with people who's working remotely from Egypt, but in a group, not individually. And there's a big difference between that. Yeah. Hopefully that answered the question a little bit, but it's very much about what you believe in as a person or don't believe in as a person. But that's my guess that it will go in that direction. Yeah.
There is another question, but I personally don't I don't think I understand it fully. It's asking about, maybe it's just a comment. It's someone is saying, we hope to facilitate the skilled workers with crafts and remove obstacles such as recognition of qualifications. Maybe he's encouraging that we recognize the person as a person, as you mentioned before, that it's not about if there is anything regarding the qualifications, if he's not ready enough or skilled enough, then give him a chance to grow. That's from my understanding, but maybe you understood it differently.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm sorry. I can't help you out on that.
There is no problem. If so, Mohammed, if you want to ask it in Arabic, and I'll try to translate it. If you can rephrase it, that would be better. There is another question regarding about the qualities that we appreciated in an environment, environment like CrossWorkers, that will give us a better chance of acceptance. I think you already mentioned that in your presentation, asking about the good communication skills, how important it is about being punctual, being on time, being as committed, respecting the other cultures. If you want to add anything else regarding the important skills and what, I think what Mohammed is trying to say is what will make him get accepted in an interview. What are the things that you look for, or if you spot in a talent that you will accept directly?
Well, I think some people try to walk into an interview and be somebody else than they actually are. When you go to an interview, you have to be true to yourself, because it's you as a person that you're trying to kind of promote or sell. So if you're promoting yourself as something that you are not, then you will lose on the long term, because that will be forced to do that. So be honest. Nobody expect a young person to have 10 years of experience. Be honest about who you are and what you can do and so forth. We've all been there. I also started at some stage, and I was just as junior as everybody else. Build up your resume with what you do. Find good internships if you're still under education. Try and build things and build it up as your personality and so forth. And then be loyal. The biggest problem, as I see it, for younger people today is that they're jumping for another job, for another penny. And that just ruins the CV totally. If you look at the CV and you see that this person has changed a lot, it's not interesting, because you show that it's not the right personality. You might have the right skills, but you don't have the right personality. The company also expects something from the employee, and the employee asks something for the employer. There has to be a balance in that. So be loyal, stay in the beginning of a career. Don't look so much for the money, for the position, for the all these things. Look to find somebody whom you can learn from, and be there for a while. Have that patience. then you will learn, and then you can jump to something else, stay there for a while and learn. I think that's important, because I see lots of resumes sometimes with really skilled people, and then 6 months there, 4 months there, 1 year there, and so forth. And you say, well, okay, so I'll invest a lot in this person for them to move away from me 4 months later. It's fair enough that we all move along and develop, but be aware that is a way to ruin your CV.
Definitely agree. We have a couple of other questions regarding how they can start their careers in Europe. I guess if there's like a platform or something that they can apply on. There's another question regarding, I don't know if it's a question or not, but saying that the qualifications that needed in a caliber to work in Europe is not easy, and it's a complex procedure, even if you have experience. So I guess, I think what he means is that there's a lot of other parameters going in the equation. It's not just or maybe it's different from one company to another. I'm sure of that.
But there's a lot of things which is doing some technical work or whatever, but you also have to live there. You have to interact in a different culture and so forth. It's just like I've been in Cairo. I've not lived in Cairo, but I've been working with Cairo for more than 13 years. I know a lot about Egypt. I know a lot about Egyptians, but there's still things which I simply do not understand and will never understand. So imagine I'm a fairly old guy with a lot of experience and have traveled in many countries and so forth. So I should have a very good basis to actually understand and know that. So if you're a young person, 20 years old, with not that experience, then it's even more difficult to move to somewhere else. And trust me, it's not so fantastic. Yes, it's a different society and so forth. And there's lots of good things, but there's also a lot of other things that sometimes is not seen. And for instance, in Denmark, half your salary is taken away in tax. So that's gone. Then try and rent an apartment. A lot of money is going away on that, transportation and so forth. It's just, it looks different than it actually is. And that is something that you have to understand before you jump into something, because you have to do it with knowledge and not just with enthusiasm and courage. It does not help you in the end.
Yes, exactly. I would second that and just tell them that it's not as easy as it seems. You need to do a lot of studying, background checks, working on yourself, working on your skills, knowing, having a plan at least, or steps, milestones of how they will move along. There is just one last question. I think we will close that with that question asking about certain technology, the Flutter cross-platform technology with the mobile development, and if you work with it in CrossWorkers. And I have one last question. If you can answer that, we can close the session with, if it's okay.
Regarding Flutter, we're getting into the details now. I'm just a marketing guy, as I said. I do believe that we work with Flutter, like we've worked with other cross-platforms in CrossWorkers. Again, it's for me, it's just a technology, and it changes all the time. And then there's a hype about a technology. Sometimes it's something that stays, sometimes it's something that fails again. Don't focus so much about technology. Focus about the ability to learn technology. That's where you should focus. Some of the best developers I've worked with throughout my career has not been computer scientists. I've worked with a guy who originally was a mechanic, and he just learned himself how to code, but he had the right attitude and so forth. So it's it's more, again, I've said it a few times, it's the personality, it's the way you approach a problem, it's the way you deal with things. Because whatever you do now, technology-wise, will just be the basis of what you will be working with later on.
Exactly. So do not think technology, think otherwise, I guess. Don't be focused so much on technology and on increasing your skills and your knowledge. So I will have to close in on the questions, but I have one last question.
Maybe just one small comment actually to this technology thing. Quite often we see that somebody we need a person with a new technology, which is not common in the market. But very, very often we know that, well, okay, he might not know this technology, but he's worked with this technology. So it's just a matter of 2 weeks of training or something like that, and then the person can actually work with a new technology as well. In that way, the customer basically get a person with 2 technology stacks and the knowledge, the business understanding and knowledge of which is far more important than just knowing the technology. So things can be changed, and you have to. If you're working with technology, it's you signed on to a constant development and constant education throughout many years. Yeah, sorry. Back to you.
No, it's it's okay. Thank you for talking on that a bit. The person was asking about the technology stack as a whole, or if you're talking about mobile in general, or in backend and or web development. So I shared the careers jobs that you have, so can check the technology stack. And if you have any updates on that, please add it on your career website, and we can share it as well on our channels. One last question that I have personally: what would make you let go of a certain talent that you have worked in CrossWorkers for a while? What is the skill that will say, or the something that he will do that say that you don't want to work with them anymore, or that person has to be let go?
That's actually an amazing, good question. It's like a machinery. A company like this is like a machinery where the wheels have to fit together and so forth. So if you're a damn good wheel, but if you don't fit into the organization, if you're too much of a prima donna, wanting everything going your way, and I can only do this and I can do that, then you're not a part of the team. It's just like a football team. You can be a prima donna to a certain extent, but if it doesn't work with the rest of the team, you're out. So be a teammate. If you're not there for the team, and that's not only the company in that sense, it's also your colleagues. If you're not there for the team, then it's difficult to fit in. We all have individual wishes and so forth, but you should fit into a team, because it's like a chain. It's the weakest link. That is what breaks, and we have to be a team. We use the expression in CrossWorkers that you're part of the family. That means that everybody has a responsibility, and it doesn't matter whether it's the office boy or the CTO or the CEO or the whoever and so forth. Everybody is equally important, and everybody has their job. And if you're not there for the community of that, for the family, and only there benefiting yourself, that's a bad start.
Definitely agree. Thank you for the detailed answer. And if you can't be a team player, if you can't fit in, then that might jeopardize your place in the family.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that you cannot grow as a person. That doesn't mean, for instance, the person who is responsible for people and culture started off, and she's a part of our management group and one of our longest and most trusted employees in the company. she started off as a recruiter, but she has the attitude, and then you grow into something else.
Thank you so much for all the details. I personally had a blast. There's a lot of details that I didn't know, and I'm sure we would need to get a bit more info on all the points that you mentioned. It was a very brief session, but very informative. I don't know what things will run in the future, but if we can extend it and make another session, that would be great. That's according to your schedule, of course. Thank you very much for your time and for taking the time to give us all the pinpointers on that. Thank you for all the participants that stayed until the end and participated with all the useful questions to make sure that everyone benefits from their questions and answers. I'm sure we'll meet again, and if you would like to add something in the end, that would be great.
I would just say shukran and ma salama, and hopefully we'll meet again, either as employees or whatever, and other connections. Hopefully we'll meet soon, inshallah.
Thank you so much. We have a lot of thank yous in the chats. Thank you for taking the time to give us the session. And if we have any other questions that we receive, we will try to gather them and send you by email to you.
Cool. All right.
Appreciate it.
Have a nice day then, and I wish a nice Ramadan for all who's going on Ramadan very soon. And it's a good time of the year for all our Islamic friends and colleagues and so forth.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. My salam.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.